Hello and welcome back to another Read Aloud. I am your lovely host, Miss Disney, and it is the first day of summer break. Yes, I see you, Quinny. I see you. It is the first day of summer break, and I thought I'd start off our summer with the book that just came a little while ago, Princess of Thieves, A Twisted Tale. And it says, what if Maid Marian were the real outlaw? It is written by, I hope I pronounced this right, Mancusi. If I mispronounce it, please comment so that way I can fix it for future references. Shall we begin? I'm so excited. Prologue. The moon was bright that night, large and orange and hanging low on the horizon. So low, in fact, you could almost imagine reaching up and plucking it from the sky to hold it in your hand. Its warm light flooded the castle's garden, illuminating the scores of delicate rose bushes that lined the winding cobblestone paths, the same rose bushes that had been planted by the castle's former queen mother, who had passed away 3 years before of a lingering illness, leaving her 2 grown sons alone, one to rule a kingdom, the other to mourn his mother. Crickets seemed to chirp a sympathy while a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of an old apple tree standing in the center of the garden. The tree had been another one of the Queen's pet projects, but back when she was but a young lady, just wed. She had loved apples, perhaps even more than she had loved roses, and many still recalled the old days when she would sit under her tree and tell fantastical myths and legends to her 2 sons, Richard and John, both of whom had adored their mother and shared her love of apples. It was under this tree that 2 young foxes now stepped towards each other, silhouetted by the bright, low-hanging moon. One was dressed all in green with a red feathered cap on his head, and a large wooden bow strapped to his back, along with a quiver full of bows. The other fox, a vixen, wore a soft lavender gown that cinched at her waist and fell to her feet, her head covered by a hat with a long pink veil that framed her sweet yet saddened face. As they stepped closer, their eyes met, and they both sighed almost in unison. "Do you really have to go?" asked Maid Marian, daring to speak first. She pulled anxiously at the hanging silk of her veil, shifting from foot to foot as her eyes darted around the courtyard. As niece and ward of King Richard, she had spent many happy hours frolicking in this very garden, often with her great green-clad companion, Robin of Locksley, a noble fox from a nearby estate. But though only a handful of years had passed since those innocent childhood days, they seemed 1,000 years ago as she gazed upon her best friend's face. Robin reached out, brushing a soft paw against Marian's cheek and coming away with a glistening claw. It was only then that she realized she must have been crying, though who could blame her, really, when she was being forced to say goodbye to her best and only friend. "King Richard needs me," Robin reminded her, his voice low, "and when the king calls, we, his loyal subjects, must answer." Marian nodded, knowing his words to be true, as much as she didn't care to hear them. He was right, of course. The king, her uncle, needed every able-bodied animal he could find to assist him in his fight for justice in a neighboring kingdom to the north. The kingdom had recently come under siege after its ruler died suddenly, leaving only a small cub as heir, a cub completely defenseless against the rogue country lords who saw fit to take advantage of his youth and stake their personal claims to the throne. Without someone stepping in to defend the rightful ruler of the land, the kingdom would fall into chaos and disrepair, and the animals would suffer for it all. King Richard declared he wouldn't let that happen, not under his watch. So he'd taken off to defend the land, leaving his younger brother, Prince John, on the throne. Marian was proud of her uncle for standing up for what was right, but she worried for him all the same, being out there daily on the battlefield, and she would worry for Robin too. "Don't get me wrong," she murmured. "I'm grateful there are those like you and my uncle to stand up for the poor and downtrodden. But, Robin, please be careful. So many English have already lost their lives in this war, and you are still very young." Robin's mouth quirked into a sly grin. "Come, Marian," he chided gently. "I may be young, but it must be said, I'm not that easy to kill." He reached behind him to stroke his favorite bow. "Why, by all rights, the enemy should be afraid of me, not the other way around. After all, I'm the best archer in all of England. Or haven't you heard?" "You may have mentioned it once or twice," she admitted with a small laugh. Robin could be cocky, but deep down it was one of the things she liked about him. He had so much confidence in him. He never let anything or anyone get under his skin. She wished she could be more like that sometimes, instead of always feeling as if the weight of the world were resting on her red, furred shoulders. "Trust me, I'll have the enemy shaking in their boots," Robin declared, patting his chest with his paw, "or my name's not Robin of Locksley." "I'm sure you will," she agreed with a smile. Then it slipped from her face. "But promise me you'll be careful all the same?" Robin's expression grew serious. "I promise," he said, meeting her eyes with his own. The cockiness had vanished, and she saw nothing but sincerity swimming in his dark pupils. "But I must insist you make me a promise, too." "What promise is that?" she asked, holding her breath. "Promise you won't forget me while I'm gone," he whispered. Marian felt heat rise to her cheeks. She was suddenly thankful it was dark, so Robin couldn't see her blush. They'd been friends for nearly all their lives. In fact, Robin had been the very first fox she'd met when she arrived at the castle after her parents had passed away, and her uncle and aunt had agreed to take her in. She'd been so sad and shy and scared back then, just wanting to crawl into a dark corner of the castle and disappear into her grief. But Robin wouldn't hear of this. Instead, he insisted she abandon her castle hideaway and take full advantage of all the kingdom had to offer, whether it be archery practice in the castle courtyard or running wild through the moors at midnight, dancing under the light of the moon. They'd wander through the villages, joining the local children in their games of tag and hide-and-go-seek, or sneak out in the rain to roll down mud-drenched hills, racing each other until they reached the bottom, laughing so much they could barely breathe. Marian had gotten so dirty on that particular adventure that when she finally limped home, her aunt claimed she didn't recognize her and had to call on her nursemaid, Lady Cluck, to throw her in a bath before she'd be allowed to join them at dinner. Robin had found that endlessly hilarious. And the next time it rained, he insisted they do it again. So yes, their friendship had always been strong. But lately, there seemed to be something else tugging at the edges, something she never felt before, and it made her feel both terribly happy and strangely sad, especially now. "I promise," she murmured, forcing herself not to turn away, to instead look into his eyes and memorize his face. After all, this might be the last time she saw him for years, the last time she saw him ever. Well then, see? Now that is something worth staying alive for, Robin declared, his cocky grin returning to his face. He tipped his hat in her direction and made a fancy bow. She giggled. She couldn't help it. But at the same time, she felt a knot form in her stomach. She knew he was talented. She knew he was brave. But she also knew war could be terrible, even for those who were talented and brave. But what could she say, except goodbye? "I hope to see you soon," she whispered. "You will," Robin promised, putting his paw over his heart as if swearing an oath. "And when I return, there will be nothing to keep us apart, ever again."